are officially live. So, welcome everybody. This is a live author interview with the amazing Daniel Barnett, and I am super happy to have my BookTube big sister here with me, Lezlie from the Nerdy Narrative.
What up,
I'm
nerds?
gonna go ahead and let them introduce themselves.
I'll let Daniel go first. Everybody
Yeah,
knows.
Daniel can go first.
Well, my name is Daniel, as you can see. Thank you both for coming in, sitting down with me today.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am a horror author. I've written 4 books, and in addition to that, I'm hard at work on the Nightmare Land Chronicles, which is an ongoing adventure horror epic following one man's journey to reach his estranged daughter in a world claimed by eternal night.
It's so
Me.
good.
Oh, I see him back there. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I've got them all out here. Well, I am Lezlie, and I have a little channel called The Nerdy Narrative, and I like to read books. And these are some of my favorite books that I discovered right about when I started my channel. I think I was really new when I first landed my hands on Nightfall. And this is the one and only series that I've had the extreme fortune to be a part of since the first one came out. So it is extra special to me. I just feel such a connection to the characters and the journey and the mystery. I feel that I am a part of this world and I am a part of this quest. It's almost like Bastion and Atreyu in the Never-Ending Story. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Well, the way I got into the series is I remember you were reading City of Blood. City of Blood had just dropped, and she is in Discord, and she is just going, guys, I need somebody to talk to. Like, she had one person she could talk to, and she's like, that's not enough. I need somebody else. I need a group of people to talk to. And I was like, I don't really read horror.
That's true.
But, yeah, sure, I'll go ahead and pick up the first one. I'll give it a shot. Why not? And I fell head over heels in love, which actually brings me to my first question. And that is me as a fantasy sci-fi reader. You kind of touched on this on the interview yesterday with Raul, which I was I was going ham the whole time.
You were. I loved it.
I was all over that interview. But what makes the Nightmare Land Chronicles appeal so well? Because I've been noticing a trend. It appeals really well to fantasy readers.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of guesswork when it comes to that sort of question. I mean, like, I don't know like an exact answer for anything that I do, really, but I would say that fantasy readers, I mean, first of all, it's been so wonderful to see how receptive fantasy readers have been to this series. It's a really cool thing to see connecting with people. As a storyteller, yeah, I think it's horror forward to some extent. Like when I sit down to write, like that's kind of in my brain, but the way my brain works with horror is like I might view it differently than other people too. So I see horror is like really broad and inclusive when it comes to genre work or like themes, characters, things like that. I see it as a big house. There's a room for like horror to explore a lot of different really cool things. And at the end of the day, my goal as an author, yeah, I love scaring readers. I love like that's all really good. But ultimately what I really care about is I want to tell a story that people can connect with, that moves people. And it doesn't matter what way it moves them. Just I want it to, emotionally connect and resonate with somebody. Because those are the kind of stories that matter to me. Those are the ones that stick with me. It's not I don't really judge stories or horror based on how scary it is. I judge it based on like numerous other things. So I think in some regards, carrying that approach into writing this, I'm less concerned with telling a horror story than I am just concerned with telling something that's exciting and fun and tragic and violent and cool and I mean like like across the board things. I want to thrill readers. I want readers to care about these characters like they're real people. And I think with fantasy readers in particular, they're really game for a big epic story told across multiple volumes. Time to get to know a cast of characters, things like that. And so there's, those are a few reasons, perhaps.
All perfectly good reasons.
Well, as a fantasy lover, I've been reading fantasy for a very long time. What I love about this series is it allows me to use my imagination, which is why I love fantasy. It really engages my imagination and takes me somewhere else. But this series, there's so much mystery to it. There's so many questions and revelations, things we're finding. We're on a quest, which is a popular fantasy trope.
Yeah, sure.
And we're on a journey, and we have characters, and you're the entire time in the first one in Nightfall, it's because one morning in May, the sun goes out and night falls. And that mystery, that ongoing mystery, and the things that are discovered as a result, I mean, I'm just constantly wondering. It feels like it just feels like you're flirting with some magic in there, but I don't know for sure. And so that appeals to me as a fantasy reader, just allowing me to use my imagination. Maybe there's magic, maybe there's not, but I don't know. There's so many wonderful things about this series that I can't talk about. You just really have to experience for yourself. But the prose is some of the best I've ever read. The character development, hands down, like there is no match for the character development in this series. And that's what really binds you to the series, are the characters. I feel. I don't know about you, Andrew. Like, what did you first fall in love with? The prose, the mystery, the characters?
Well, so you pretty much took the words out of my mouth. So I've got to try and scramble to find something to say here without falling flat-faced. But,
we're like twins.
But with Nightfall, I remember the first chapter, specifically, this is just going to be like light spoiler, like literally the first chapter, is John is like standing on this cliff, just like watching the sunset, drinking his coffee, standing on the grave of his dog, I believe. And like this little boy walks up and I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. And then all of a sudden, like it just starts going. And I was just like, oh, okay. That happened really quickly, which for the page count, it just has to. But I remember the scene that grabbed me the most. There's two scenes that grabbed me the most. One involves a motorcycle and one involves a bar fight. Mm-hmm. And those specific scenes were so visceral, and just, it was like, it grabbed me and said, pay attention to me. Something amazing is happening, and you're getting ready to experience this. And I was in for the ride. Like, I mean, as soon as I finished Nightfall, I was a diehard fan.
John's walk down the mountain, like, I don't know if it was a mountain. I guess it was more like a hill. John's walk down the path, that is the most visceral scene that stands out to me for the entire series, was that walk. The way that you described what he saw, Daniel, as a result of like what humanity was doing when the sun disappeared, that was insane.
We will definitely get into spoilers a little later so that we don't alienate a bunch of the viewers.
I wasn't going to give it any. I wasn't going into detail.
There are definitely some things that I want to know about. But from you as a author, Daniel, I heard some of your false starts yesterday, all over yesterday, with being a self-pub author. But I kind of want to get into like your origins of like, what made you choose horror? What inspired you to write these stories? Where do you draw inspiration from? Just kind of like, a little peek behind the curtain.
Yeah, for sure. And this also is going to tie back to fantasy again too. And I've even had this discussion with Lezlie before, or parts of this discussion. So I was like an avid reader growing up. I mean, that's probably true for a lot of people who are, on BookTube or, Peripheral or whatever. But I was that kid who was reading anything he could get his hands on. Like I went to school at the same school that my mom taught, and I remember like vividly one day she took The Hobbit away from me so that I had to play with friends. Like I had to go try to play with people at recess, and I was like, what the hell? You said reading is good, so I should be able to just read during my recess. And she's like, no, you have to socialize, Daniel. But it wasn't. So middle school, I had kind of like the dual misfortune and blessing of making a really foolish decision, because I was, which was to read The Stand. I was thinking, okay. I was like, it's either The Stand or It, because I really like challenging myself with big books. You know, you're like a kid, you're like, yeah, it's big. And so I was like, The Stand is going to be milder than It. It is so scary. Everybody was always like, all the kids at school were like, It, it's got the scary clown and like Pennywise, like, and I was terrified I was like very scared of the dark kind of child, like embarrassingly so. And just this overactive imagination, I just could not power it down. And so I thought The Stand would be a safer read, and it turns out, I mean, it's like significantly darker than It was. So I had like this period of time where I was hiding this. I would hide The Stand from myself because it disturbed me so bad. And then I would but I knew where I hid it, so I'd find it and I'd keep going back to it. And I mean, it was actually really dark. It kind of triggered a really dark period in my life, because I think it triggered some like latent OCD stuff. So I had just a lot of stuff that was like, just that window into how dark humanity can be, like how awful humanity can be, was a terrible kind of revelation for me at that time. And I could not disconnect my brain from those horrors in there. So that was sort of the preview for me. I didn't revisit King again until 11th grade in high school, because I was like, I can't go through that kind of thing again. And then I did read It. And when I read It, I was more, it was more mature and everything. I was ready for it. And it was like that switch where, I'd written things. I had little publications like school library or like little like program things. I even had my stepmom, was like, you should think about writing. And I was like, I can't do that. Why would I do that? I was writing like a Samurai Jack fan fiction and stuff like in middle school, but I just never really clicked as like something I could do more than just like a one-off. Like I did it then, but I never revisited. And when I read It, it was just like magic. I was like, I want to try to like achieve even like a fraction of like what this meant to me on like the way it just like kind of blew my mind. The way he just takes these characters that feel so real and puts them in extraordinary circumstances and tests them. But this is where we circle back to fantasy again. I'm a big fantasy reader. I love fantasy. I was just yesterday talking about like Logan Ninefingers being one of my favorite characters ever. Like,
oh, don't get Andrew started on.
I'm more of a Glocta fan.
Well, I like Glocta just fine. I mean, Glocta is great.
I love Logan.
But Logan as this sort of like disarming kind of bumbling, like he's the violent archetype, but it's so genius to subvert like the way that character presents himself and everything. And in any case, like, but I'm also a sucker for that archetype to begin with. So this was like a really genius subversion of it. But in any case, I've read tons of fantasy over the years. I love fantasy, and It is Stephen King's It. I wish I did. I wish. I mean, maybe somewhere, but I doubt it. It was like, I don't know, if I did, I would love to see it. It would be really fun.
Well, it looks like you've got beta readers if you ever find it.
But It is foundationally, like on its foundation, it is a fantasy novel in terms of its conventions. It's got like a cast of chosen ones to battle a great evil. It's got this like pervading sense of like mysticism and goodwill persevere. There's just a lot of foundational narrative aspects that make that like it's a horror novel 100%, but it's built on a foundation of fantasy. Its beams, its bones are fantasy. Everything else is horror. more or less, pick and choose your metaphor. But in any case, that kind of thing, like so much of what I enjoy in horror, the Nosferatus of the world, like Joe Hill's kind of stories are, I mean, you might even qualify them sometimes. I mean, some people might qualify them as like comfort horror in a sense, which is to say, like, not that they don't challenge you, or that not that they're like not really, that there aren't hard parts. But I like horror. I like Joe Hill's definition of comfort horror, and it's like it's less about degrading the characters, and more about like excitement and danger and visceral thrills and things like that. So I love a good adventure story at the end of the day, and it all ties in with like there's always going to just be this big soft spot for fantasy for me. Even my favorite horror novels are fantasy novels in a sense, so like yeah.
Well, and that kind of raises an interesting question that I didn't have written down, is like, there's like multiple different types of horror. And
So
I'm personally not a fan of like I like classic slashers where like you've got more suspense than the gore. Like I am not a gore forward horror fan.
Yeah.
But I do like thriller, suspense, psychological horror. I love all of that, which I think is why I associate so well with Nightmare Land Chronicles, because it's really about the dread of and the uncertainty and like what is next. And so I really love that instead of there's gore everywhere. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a couple bits where like especially in City of Blood, where it's just like, oh, that's a bit gross, but I still loved it because it's not the main focus. And I feel like at least 10 years ago, a lot of the horror out there was focusing on the ick factor rather than that, sense of like, just tension and suspense that, a good horror story can make you feel, that can cause a lot of, like self-discovery. And I think those are my favorite.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. I mean, I really, like, I love gore and I love all sorts of things. I mean, there's not really any aspect of horror that I don't enjoy. I mean, I have my like favorites. I have scales.
There's one aspect I don't like. I do not like I call it pornography horror, where it's literally, that is the main focus. And I'm like, that, I know it has its niche, but I do not find that entertaining in the least bit.
Have you read Clive Barker?
I have read Clive Barker. I've read Weave World.
Okay. See, I really am going to go ahead and strongly recommend Clive Barker to both of you, because if you've only read Weave World, you've just like scratched the surface on what he is.
I just got a Magica.
Oh my God. There was a period of time where I considered it my favorite book ever. And it has a really neat divide down the middle. So if you read it, you'll know where that like halfway point is. Some of the editions were even released in 2. And it's easy to take a break there if you're just like, whew, I need to let that sink in a little bit. It's heavy. It's like thick and dense.
His prose is absolutely phenomenal.
He's probably the only horror author that like does eroticism right for me. Which is to say,
it similar? Have you read Brian Lumley's Necroscope?
I haven't. I'm not. I know the name, but I'm not familiar.
Yeah, that has some. And like, I'm good with that level that was in there.
The only time that Clive Barker in Weave World made me go, was that really necessary? Was like, we're in this really dense, tense moment. And Clive, and I forget the main character's name, the gentleman, stops and takes a couple seconds to consider how full his genitalia might feel at that moment. And I was just like, okay, you had me right up until then. And
Weave World is kind of like PG Clive Barker in that regard. He's like a very sexual being, like an abundantly sexual being.
The answer is yes.
Now I'm curious.
But the thing with like a Magica is, he's he doesn't like it's not, internet. It's not pornography the way he describes stuff. Like he has like his, sometimes it can be a little too much for me at times, but there's always this, I don't know. I mean, it depends on the book. Like, again, he's just a very sexual being, but like, there's a lot of like the most gender fluid character of all time in Imagica, like on a literal level, and there's just some abundantly beautiful sex scenes scattered throughout that book. Some of them get into. I don't even know how to convey it. It's been so long since I've read it, but like there's a spiritual level that he reaches with that, where it's like a transformative metamorphosis sort of stuff going on. I'm forgetting the word, but anyway,
I'm thinking of a scene from American Gods. Is what you're describing to me.
The one where she inhales somebody.
Yes, the one where she inhales somebody.
I'm reading that one next month.
I don't.
I would get the one without the extra 10,000 words. I don't think the extra 10,000 words are necessary for American Gods.
I didn't know there were 2 editions, honestly.
Yeah,
but
there's the original, and it's kind of like a stand thing, where you've got the original text, and then you've got the graphic novel, and then you've also got the expanded edition.
Well, the original of the stand is, I mean, this is a big soapbox of mine, like a very common one. That's my favorite book ever. Anyway, super tangent here with Clive Barker, but everything he describes is beautiful. So even if it's horror, it's beautiful. Like whatever it is, it's all beautiful, because that's like the way his language works. And I would just be really curious to hear what you think. But yeah.
All right, which one should I read first?
I actually just got it and Imagica. I got the original UK hardcovers.
Oh my gosh! So I'm gonna go ahead and say, Lezlie, pick up the Books of Blood. The multi-volume series there.
Lezlie, I'll read it with you.
Start with the Books of Blood.
I'll read it with you.
Because it's some of the best short, medium horror fiction ever written, period, bar none. And then that's a great established point for Barker. And then from there, I would just go straight into Imagica, knowing you love big stories and stuff. But the Books of Blood are a miracle of fiction.
Got it.
And I would say for it, my recommendation for it, this is maybe a rare recommendation, is to read it like a serialized novel, unless you just can't stop reading. But don't be afraid to hit those act breaks. And don't be afraid to hit those act breaks and read another book and come back to it and read it like it's a series, or kind of, because he takes time to explore different kinds of horror on a human level, because it's more than just about it. It's about Derry and like human evil kind of reflected in this town. And those passages that some people are like, oh, these Mike Hanlon passages are bullshit. They don't go explore anything, or they're just treading water. But those are actually some of like incredibly insightful into like human, like slice of life in different periods of history, because they date back like. From a white author is probably some of the best. There's some passages in there that deal with racism that, like, from a white author specifically, are very insightful and just rich. So it's easier to appreciate those when you're not like just chasing the end of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's me. I get excited about people reading these things.
Well, you pretty much answered, because I was going to be like, did you read Clive Barker and Stephen King? Sorry, I can't hear you right now, but I can definitely talk to you. And let's get that back on. But I was really curious, because you just answered those with them being your origins. So that's really fascinating. Do you think after this long process of finishing Nightmare Land that you will ever possibly write dark fantasy?
Well, in certain forms, probably not like high fantasy or that kind of thing, but I could see stuff kind of towing the line, maybe a little more overtly than any of my previous work. I mean, I have some ideas that are like, it just depends, sometimes it's just a difference in tone. It's hard to say. And like with Clive Barker, he pummeled out horror for a long time, and then he was just like, basically like, screw it, I'm a fantasy guy at my roots. And he kind of stuck there for pretty much since then.
Yeah, he's done it for a while.
But again, it's not like a restrictive thing. Magica has some incredibly dark, horrifying passages, but it is very much a fantasy novel. It just, it's just a matter of percentages, I guess.
I like the blend anyway.
I do.
I like when my fantasy and horror just kind of overlap and intermingle. Yeah. That's just
Same.
like the perfect book for me.
Same. That's one of the reasons. Like, I love just about everything Joe Hill's written. Like, he's like there with like charming, touching, exciting, like unique stories and stuff.
One of these days I'll read. Is it Nosferatu?
Yeah, and I have it here to read too, Andrew. I haven't read it yet.
Oh my God!
I'll read it someday.
December, you have to line it up for December, right? Because it's a Christmas
line it up for December.
Yeah,
right.
Do it.
Yeah, it's not like I have 30 books to read, so let's do it. We're gonna, I'm gonna try and pressure my patrons into leveraging that one for the patron pick. Just kind of turn that lever a little bit.
It's perfect for Christmas, like because it's about a bad man who kidnaps children and takes them to Christmas land.
He's Krampus.
So I have a question about writing. So do you just set aside a little bit of time each day and you just sit down and you're like, I'm going to write 1,000 words today, and you sit down, you do it and you're done? Or do you just write when the inspiration hits? Do you have a routine that you're like go through that lets your body know, hey, you're about to sit down and get creative? How does that work?
So it's changed over the years. When I first started, I was trying to find it like in the school of getting 1,000 words down each day. But I think I have grown as a writer. My stuff has become better since I kind of let go of that. I mean, it's also just the process of learning and getting better too. Like I ruthlessly revised. Like Longreave was 180,000 words when I first finished it, and I revised it down to 117.
You mean this one?
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
I don't have a physical copy yet.
So, like that was probably one of the most significant learning experiences for me in terms of like mechanical efficiency and things like that. Like I did it on a large. I only changed one plot line in that, which was like the denouement was originally quite a bit longer, and I cut that down to just like much less to get to the end faster after the big climax. But the rest was like I cut off 63,000 words, a novel length, by line to line changes, just by going through and saying like 3 lines, can I say this in 2? Like anything and everything I could do, just trimming. And that was hugely informative to me. But again, to circle back to the question, I kind of gave up 1,000 words a day because it wasn't working for me. I'm not a terribly fast writer. And when I'm in a flow, like 1,000 words a day is ish about what I write. Like when I'm like feeling it and I'm going well, but it's not. I like to remove expectations, because writing for me, I want it to be about like the emotional connection with the scene, with the characters in the scene. So it can, like, that emotional connection day by day can be just like the most simple thing. Sometimes it's just like one sentence, just the right sentence to start the next scene, or just a little something, and then that kind of like connects for a while, and I ride that until it sort of stops for the day, or I get tired, or I have to do something else, and then I just set it aside. I put this more into practice writing Lily. I had a kind of like a hard period for like mental health and health in general during the pandemic, like seasonal affective disorder stuff. I was like really down and just couldn't get up. And so during that time period, like trying to force myself to write and be productive was actually making me like physically sick for a while, which is really kind of unsettling, So I was just so tired, and if I tried to force through that, I'd get like a fever and get like achy. It was really weird. The sun came back, so I let it go for a while. The sun came back out, and I started feeling more human again. So at that point in time, I've really boiled it down. I don't even have word counts on my documents. I purposefully turn them off. I don't I'll check them occasionally, but sometimes it'll be like months between checking them. I usually check them when I get to the point when I start, if I realize that I'm like starting to guess too much how many words it is or will be, I'll just be like, okay, now it's counterintuitive. Just look. The whole point is to not think about it. So just look occasionally or whatever. But I don't try to measure productivity according to numbers when it comes to writing anymore. I do have a routine in the morning. My kind of life tightens a little bit around writing, and it's something I'm also kind of working on keeping a little bit loose. But I'm pretty regimented about like go to bed at reasonable hours, like getting a lot of sleep and stuff. And like this last period of time, I would like try to spend a little time in the sun in the morning. I have like certain books that I read like 10 pages of a day, usually a King book, because that's really like where my like home is for writing, that voice and stuff, where I'll read 10 pages before writing for that given day. Just trying to kind of do it in like a really natural, organic way. So I'm not concerned.
Sounds really healthy.
Just trying to, like, I really don't, I want it to be about the process and not about the result. Like trying not to think about like, because I will stub my toe like and trip up if I start thinking like I'm close to the end and I start thinking about like when I'm going to finish. I'm not thinking about the story anymore. So there's like what I kind of consider like there's inside thinking and outside thinking, and both kind of have their places. But the best writing, like I do the best writing when I'm inside and I'm not looking, around and out. So it's just about every given day trying to find a little bit of joy in the connection with the story. Just trying to find that connection, because that's where my gratification lies, is that feeling like I connected with, character, the moment even.
It produces quality. Well, Nightmare Land Chronicles are quality writing. Just the way it's written, the prose, the story, the characters, everything about it is quality. The atmosphere, quality. But I follow a ton of authors on Twitter because authors are my celebrities, and I will follow them. And so many of them say I have to write X number of words every day. And I just got to thinking the other day, because I knew we had this coming up, and I thought, I just feel like that's forcing yourself to write. And is that quality? Is that healthy? Is that time well spent? Because I don't think I would be able to function that way. I think I would only be able to do it when the inspiration hit, which unfortunately for me is always when I'm in the shower and I can't write any of these wonderful ideas I have down. I mean, I guess I could fog up the shower doors and be like,
you could just tape like a video, a voice recorder to like the shower pole, and then like click record, and then start yelling at it. It's like, I have an idea, and then see what happens.
Like, hey Siri, remember this.
It's definitely the right, like the hard line is definitely the right thing for some people. I mean, I see people that like they talk about word counts, it's just mind boggling me. They're just mind boggling to me, where like I'll see authors who'll be like, not a really good day today, got down like 3,000 words in 2 hours, hoping for a better one tomorrow. And I'm just like, the fuck? What is it? Like, I can count on one hand the amount of time I've written over 3,000 words in a day in my entire career. I mean, like I have, like this is my, this is the work of my 20s.
You can
like,
just stick that in a box and send it to me.
This is everything that I have. In the entirety of this, I've probably hit 3,000 words like 3 times at most.
I just would love to get a hold of, because I've read your first draft of Lily, and I would love to get a hold.
Rub it in.
I would love to get a hold of one of these others' first draft and compare them, because in my opinion, your first draft needed no editing. There were a couple of times there was like one word was like typed twice. That happened once. And then there was like twice where your spell check wouldn't catch it because the word was spelled correctly. It was just the wrong. It would be like wood, like WOOD instead of WOUL. Yeah. I'm like, this is a first draft. Are you kidding me? And then I was like, don't change anything.
Well, I didn't
touch it.
It's probably now. So it's now at the editor with the editor as of yesterday. It's probably about 2,000 words shorter than the version that I gave you, but that's a 120,000 word book. That's just like shaving. I'm just like, there's just little things, like at most like a little bit of dialogue here that I was like, oh, that's not quite sticking, or a couple.
I literally
places.
cannot think of any dialogue that was not sticking.
I'm excited to get a hold of it at all, and so now I'm just sad.
I've definitely noticed that my editing, the editing I do after the fact, to some extent, it depends on the book, has gone down if I allow myself to go just slowly with the first draft. It's when back in the days when I was chasing word counts, that's when I ended up having these books that were really overly long at the end, because session by session I was trying to like fill stuff out. It just ended up a little bit more. But now when I'm trying to look at it from an approach where like all I want to do is just write something like I'm happy about each day, and some days it's like a paragraph, and some days it's a couple pages, and just trying to just be like, that's a part of the process. So much of the writing is done away from the computer, so like, or just the work is done. Like I lay under a tree in the sun and I doze on and off, and I read a different book and I space out and think about my stuff. I'm like, that's all a part of the process. These quiet hours built in too, so it doesn't all have to be
sitting
a lot of
it
it's
keyboard pounding away.
Yeah, it's listening. Like it's just listening. Like listening for that voice, trying to like reduce distractions so that you can better hear it, set yourself up for success, and then don't punish yourself for perceived failures by just making it like the work is what matters. Like you put in the time, and you take time away when you need to, and you trust that it will be there, that it will be done sometime. And it's an ongoing process, because it is like having two different brains, because some days it's so there you can't imagine that it would never not be there, and the next day you sit down and you're just like, it's not there, and you're like, what am I doing wrong? But then like, that's what you're doing wrong, is to even like make it about a failure. It's just
I've gotten
part of
that
the
way
process.
when I was recording before, and like you just can't get out of your own head.
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day. My videos are an absolute mess. If anybody ever saw
The raw
footage, you would not believe what that looks like compared to what actually. And my greatest fear is that I'll do a review or I'll talk about a series like this that I love, and I feel like I can never find the right words, the adequate words to convey how I feel. I am not an author, and I have trouble communicating feelings sometimes. So that's why I hope people watch my videos. They don't just listen, because I feel that it's more about what you can see my animation. You can see the love for it. You can see the passion. You can better than what my words can express.
But your words are wonderful, though. You're just being hard on yourself. I mean, like the both of you are two. I mean, the enthusiasm you bring to your channels, like just like the love of stories that you bring, it's like really special. Like genuinely, like it's always really nice checking in and like hearing you guys talk about books, because it's really pure. You guys, like, there's no bullshit. You just really like stories. You know what you're here for, and you always convey that well. Like both of you. Like from my perspective, you know, outside looking in, like, well, I don't see the stuff that's left on the the cutting room floor, but.
And tying that back to Nightmare Land, like again, like I remember Lezlie just freaking out about City of Blood, and and like, you know, I respected Leslie's opinion on books. I'm like, if she's this animated about a book, and I don't care what the book is, like I'm gonna probably pick it up at some point in time. And then she was just like, read it. Have you started reading it? Read it. Okay.
I mean, I just needed somebody to talk to.
I love Nightmare Land, and just the fact that you're self-published is it blows my mind, because like you said, you don't force it. You do it when you're in the mood. It's all about the quality and the journey for you. And I mean, Nightmare Land, this has to be said, is it's so polished and it's so heartfelt and it just packs such a punch that like I would assume that you had put it through an agent and it had gone through a professional editor 4 times and had been peer reviewed and just everything. I mean, there are characters, you pay such close attention to not only your characters' justifications, but their emotional health, their cultural aspects, which we'll talk about here in a minute when we talk spoilers, because I don't want the video to last 2 hours. So well, actually, I do want it, but you know,
I'm here however long you guys want.
I think
next.
What you just described, Andrew, I think that is, when I first read Nightfall, I was like, this guy belongs on the shelf with Stephen King. Like,
yes, absolutely.
His name is going to be a household name like Stephen King one day. And I think that's what it is. I think you just nailed it, because I've always said I love how Stephen King writes small town USA. Like, you read a book, it has a main character, it's got a villain, it has its story. But Stephen King writes the entire city, town, wherever the story takes place. He writes it in a way that you know everybody. You relate to everybody. And that's one thing I've loved, and I feel that that's exactly what Daniel has done in Nightmare Land Chronicles. It's not just your main character. It's not just that one mystery when the sun went out that you're trying to solve. It's about everybody you meet along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. That minutia just matters, and it comes through so well. You utilize one of my favorite tropes, which is the found family trope, and
Yes.
it's so believable because in a non-spoiler fashion, like Nightfall is John's story, and then Lullaby is very much I know you pronounce it Maria. It's weird for me. My sister's name is Maria. So I'm gonna say Mariah.
I call her Mariah.
Well, I was watching Raul's interview and he said Maria, and I was like, "Who's Maria?" And then he explained that like it was always Maria in his brain, but like he had to have the H on there.
We explained it forever.
Yeah. And then Sleepwalking is very much, you know, the two characters coming together. My favorite character and Mariah coming together. And then we kind of get a reintroduction in the Flashlighters. And then it all kind of comes together into this perfect found family in City of Blood. And what's so fascinating about that is that you took the time and you broke it up in such a way that each story, even though Lullaby could very much be tacked on to Sleepwalking, it feels very personal to Mariah. And so therefore it most obviously should be by itself. And I can just see the journey and see how where we start in Nightfall to where we end in City of Blood. And I can only imagine what Lily's going to do.
Blow your mind. That's what it's going to do.
So that's it. It's cool to hear you say that, because, I mean, I wrote Lily and Sleepwalking together, like, straight through, and as if it was going to be one. And then I just kind of had the same realization where I was like, you know, this desert stuff, while it does, you know, connect, it's its own thing. And in the serialized format, it was something that I was like, that can be on its own and it should be on its own, I think, you know, like it felt right.
Absolutely.
I was a little worried doing that. You know, I never want people to feel like I'm like splitting books up for cash grab and stuff. If anybody
No. It was perfection, because it allows the reader to just stop and let it soak in just what you did with that character and the development. And I mean, that was a perfect. Words are failing. No,
you know, and thank you, Nico. I hope I pronounced your name right.
Yep.
I would say, yeah, you know, I just knew that it wasn't gonna, like, Lullaby doesn't have. I have these little like scales in my head and stuff too. So like Lullaby doesn't quite have like the same degree of, it's not a visceral climax. It's very much like woman versus nature, but like nature's different now in some ways. And unforeseen kind of unprecedented hurdles to to jump here, situational things that are kind of unique, but not a big visceral, like not a physical challenge per se. And are we going?
As soon as you're done talking.
Okay. So, and then sleepwalking, you know, is its own thing, and I look at them in certain ways. Like some of them have more of a human horror element, and then others have more of the supernatural horror element. Lily is like the thesis on the human horror element. It has nightmares because I think that's an important thing to me, is that each of these stories, well, once we hit book 3 and like the stuff is fully kind of established, I'm being vague on purpose, but like there's certain promises I make to the reader, just kind of implicit promises, and there's going to be that kind of thing. So Lily is kind of front loaded with the supernatural horror element, and I use that in a way to buffer some of the slower character beats on the other side of the story. It's very much a dual narrative for the first half, even almost, because those slower beats were vital for me. That I had the time to explore them.
No,
I mean,
sir.
slower, like as in like, you know, just
my levels of excitement are already through the roof, Lily.
Like
or not Lily,
characters,
Leslie.
like the characters you
that.
care about. Well, there's definitely I think I would hazard a guess that there's suspense that comes through, but it's building blocks, character relationships, big moments between the characters and stuff, but not the horror aspect. So I was trying to balance things out there and use these exciting, visceral, creepy, in your face, sometimes horror sections in that first half to buffer those other things that were like really important to me too. And then by the time Lily reaches its second half, it's purely human horror, and it's purely like the decisions your characters have made have caught up to them. Some of those like in the small, like, and like, here we go. And so the horror at that point is of a very different kind of variety, but I think that's like, of that kind of horror, like there's not going to be another book like Lily in this series. I'll say that, I guess. Like,
I mean, it's the end of the first arc. You got to end it with a
Yeah.
bang.
Yeah, it's
Which, I mean, speaking of with a bang, though, because I've put up the spoiler section banner,
okay.
I have to know the inspiration behind the shot glass.
Oh yeah. I don't know exactly where it came from. I will
That whole
say
scene, like, in my review, I don't mean to cut you off, but
one
in
of
my
the most
review,
fun things.
I was just, in my review, I'm just like, oh yeah, a lot of authors would tell you, oh, my character's a badass, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my god.
I have messaged Leslie about this like more than once, where I'm just like, I can't wait for Andrew to read Lily, because if he thinks the shot glass was nuts,
Oh. That's what
Right?
I've been laughing the whole time since you
Yeah.
mentioned it.
because like that was just like
Oh.
a little hint of John, like what he's done and what he's capable of.
John is so
Um,
cool.
And I mean,
His like when Nightfall started and we met him in that first chapter, and he's just standing there drinking his coffee on a grave, and you're not sure who the grave is. You know there's something about him. And I thought the whole story was about him, because I was like, okay, this dude is scary.
Yeah, no.
He was full of darkness, and I was like, okay, well,
the
this is
touch
what
with
it's
the
gonna be on.
wolves is just great.
Oh.
The whole backstory, the touch with the wolves. Leslie, stop it!
we at one
Y'all
point,
were gonna tease me, and this is
Yeah.
just too much. I'm dying.
at one point we were toying about the idea of having like selected lines from the story and making you guess like the context of those lines.
Oh man, I forgot.
That would've been-
I'm
that would've been
dying.
But yeah, you know, so John, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to it, and a lot of like, okay, so Lily's a big book, and it's a lot of people's book, but like at the like on a foundational level, it is John's book. The way you talked about Lullaby being
full circle.
Yeah, it's like those answers there are some answers you will never get by design, because I really do fully believe in there being some mystery that's like just one, like something or other, right there at the very center. But all the things around that thing, those get filled out and answered, and like hopefully the reader will be like, oh my God, when it comes to like, this is why he is the way he is. And I think, what makes John, and it's not necessarily unique again, it's an archetype. We're talking about archetypes, and there's variations on this, and it's like my favorite archetype in the world is like the tragic, violent anti-hero, is that like the degree of self-loathing that comes with his ability, like he can do these terrible things that in a certain context in a certain context in his life have been the most heroic things you can imagine. But like, to me, at least that's the way I look at it. Like, he's done some things that are, but like he still only understands this language that's violence. And as a result, him from the inside out, it's not a special thing. It's he's terrible. He thinks he's like, I'm a monster, but like for some of those people that are around him who maybe like are still breathing, or whatever, because he did this thing that nobody else would have been able to do, because he's a genius when it comes to violence. It's like,
I have a quote for that. When you set yourself to violence, it is already done. That was perfect. That's from Lily.
Yeah.
Don't tease me. I'm already suffering. I would throw
Come
up my
on,
entire
can I
TBR.
can I give you one more favorite
You can give me one
quote?
more. You can give me one more.
And I'm not going to tell you who said it. But who you are isn't always such a great distance from who you could become. Freaking chills. I mean, that's just... Had to write those down. And I have some more, but you would definitely...
It's just the most special thing in the world to hear that, like, finding lines that did for you what those did for you. Finding those kinds of lines in the stuff that I read is what makes reading special for me. Like, it's the thing that makes it most special of all is just those things. And again, I'm not trying to like say like, I did that, you know what I mean? But like, it's kind of the same when you're writing it too. Like, when you find that line when you're writing it, like, I'm first and foremost, I'm trying to tell myself the kind of story that I love. Like, that's what I'm trying to do. Like, and so, I'm sitting down day by day, and I get excited to share it with people and all those things, but then I kind of continue to talk myself down and just remind myself, like, this period of time in which it only belongs to me is like the most special time in its own way. And that's all part of the process when it comes to taking it slow and stuff, is just remembering like, hey, like I'm here because I'm trying to capture a bit of what I love in my own way. And it's just a really special thing to have the opportunity to do that. And then to hear that it, hits people sometimes that way, it's really special. So Thank you, Lezlie.
Well, I was scared to write down too many because I knew you were editing, and I was like, if he changes these,
you're gonna make him put it back in.
Oh, those are safe, and the one you have about hope on your review, that didn't change. And like a lot of that stuff, when I have it, like when I know that I have it the way that I want, I don't know. It's just sometimes you just know, like, okay, that made it the right way in. Like, that certain things don't need to be tinkered with, I guess. But yeah.
So did you know this first arc? Did you have that entire arc sort of planned out before you even started writing, or do you find it as you go?
I had pieces. I'm going to torture Andrew again. I'm going to say I had John's final ride in mind from the beginning.
So you're talking like book 12?
Oh, no, book 6.
Okay.
But where
he said final ride, but it's not what you're thinking it is.
There's different ways to interpret that. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's like in a very particular sense of the word ride. But like so that passage was something. But again, on the flip side, that passage ended up being like really cold and to the point when I got to it, when I wrote it. And when I initially was imagining it, I was thinking this was going to be this like intensely emotional, cathartic, like overflowing kind of stuff in that ride itself. But when I got there, all of the emotion had already come. And
yes, I know why.
Yeah, like with the previous
Shameless.
Like his previous scenes leading up to that, a certain pivotal decision he makes and then kind of unmakes, and all of the emotion was wrapped up into those moments. So the catharsis had already happened, this change had already happened, and by the time we get to the ride, like he's just gonna do what he does. There's no emotion to it. He's just like, this is what I do, like who I am, you know. But and anyway, I want to talk about Lily so bad too.
We can do another live show once Lily comes out. Which, by the way, when does Lily come out?
So my initial hope was to have advanced review copies available and mailed to people in November. It seems now more likely that might be December, because I did get it to my editor and she's got a really busy plate and she's projecting mid to late November for the return. It's possible that it comes back sooner. I intend to kind of bang out like final revisions in a week. It's a big book, and I think that, you know, there's going to be places where she like Carmen, like my editor and agent, she's going to like catch me stubbing my toe on something or other, and there'll be things that like need a little bit more work, but on the whole, I don't think Lily's going to need a ton of work at this point. It's just sometimes they just come out closer to the mark than other times, you know. And
I'll tell you what though,
November, probably December.
I would buy a special edition hardcover of the first arc if you ever choose to do that. Like, if you want to do like a limited printing, you can just go ahead and pin my name in there. For number one, I want to jump Leslie's spot because I know she'll buy it. So I want number one, and then Leslie number two.
Andrew, I am the president of the Daniel Barnett fan club, if you did not know, so you cannot jump me.
No, listen. What I just did right there is called dibs. Okay, you must respect the sacred art of dibs, and therefore, you can have number one of arc 2, but number one of arc 1 comes to.
I think I'll reread. I think I'll start my reread of Lily tonight.
Going for the jugular, huh? Fine, yeah.
I would love to have. I mean, there will be a collected edition at some form or like in some way, shape, or form at some point in time of the first arc and the second arc separately, maybe together too. I don't know. There might even be. It's quite likely that at some point in time you'll see like an established part 1 through 6 that's there to stay, and an established 7 through 12 that's there to stay, and then maybe like collector editions of just like this is a gigantic 1 through 12.
Yeah, I've had so many people ask if you're gonna do like one big bind up at the end.
I think so. I mean, like,
but like everybody,
Way of Kings leather bound.
No, see, they ask me. They're like, "Oh, is he gonna do a bind up?" And I'm like, "Have you seen these covers? Like, why?" why would we do a bind up and miss out on this gorgeousness? Like, why would we do that? And you know what?
Definitely go in the book.
Most every time that somebody says that and then they get the first one and they realize how beautiful Daniel Serra's artwork is, then all of a sudden they're getting all of them.
Yeah. I mean, it's been really, I mean, he's been such a vital part of the series in like, I so hope to work with him for 7 through 12 again. You know, it's not something that we've discussed at this point in time. I know that his plate is like, he's just like astoundingly prolific and in like so much demand for his work. But it's been really special being able to work with him for these first 6 volumes, and I would dearly love it if because I don't know how anybody would like follow in his footsteps. But I mean, there's amazing artists.
Tall task.
But he's, I mean, go ahead. Sorry.
One thing I do want to cover, and I'm bouncing around a little bit here at this point, just because I want to make sure I ask, because I remember DMing you, or I either tweeted at you or DM'd you on Twitter. When I've been skirting around Marcos this entire live show, and I remember messaging you because Marcos is deaf, and I thought that you did a fantastic job with the deaf representation of Marcos and how like it is between a deaf child and a hearing mother. And I just kind of wanted to get some backstory, some research, like what did you do to better understand the culture? Do you have some specific insight? Because my grandparents are deaf, so it meant quite a lot to me.
Well, first and foremost, like I listened to your review of that, and when you talked about that part, I teared up because, like, for me, I was really like going into some uncharted territory, and I know it's just like I wanted to do it right as right as I could, and I didn't know how people were going to react to that, and like that facet of his character. Big tough boy. Al, come here. He's a guard dog here.
So you have no personal experience with that?
No.
Wow.
You did a very good job.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I know that there's an aspect of Marcos that's probably informed or inspired a little bit by Nick Andros and The Stand, consciously or unconsciously. Al, come here. Yeah, he's like trying to go back to that door. He's like, I'm gonna get over there and guard it some more. But
what most people don't understand about the deaf community is that it's a community. There is, in fact, an entire culture around it. There have been, it's not talked about as much in the mainstream, but like, my grandfather was a political activist for deaf rights and for deaf education and things of that nature. And so like when you see Marcos and his mother just struggling because Marcos just sub-vocalizes without realizing what he's doing. And like she uses pain as, as sad and as heartbreaking as it is, like, she didn't know what to do because there's not a lot of educational material out there on how to interact with a deaf child when you are a person of hearing. And so they have this, there's a whole culture on how to engage in conversation. There's still tons of issues on education and public schooling for deaf kids. And it was really, really important and moving for me that you approach that with such sensitivity. And at the same time, like, you could tell that she was doing the best she could because she didn't know any better.
Yeah,
it wasn't like abuse.
It wasn't hateful.
Yeah. It was, she inflicted a trauma on him, but it was in response to her own addressed trauma coupled with the situation, so her parents had been, when she was a very young age, like kind of whisked away by immigration services or whatnot, and sent back to Mexico. And so she was kind of left largely alone in her childhood, and she had this idea of like can't stand out, got to blend in, and like there's little things there that are kind of mixed in that is like touched on, like, you know, she even called him Mark instead of Marcos, but he kind of like in his own little willful way, I don't mean little in like a little sense, but just like in like one slight particular way, claimed Marcos is like kind of this, like, he didn't really have this, like, he didn't have a connection to his Mexican heritage any more than some fleeting correspondences with his grandparents, but he kind of like tries to like sort of hold on to little aspects of his identity. Again, that was something for me. That aspect of his character is another thing that was scary for me too. But I felt like, well, okay, I don't know what it is to be, you know, a Mexican American in the U.S., but I can imagine what it might be like, maybe to some extent, one who isn't raised as like, who, like, you know, it's like functionally, I don't really know how to express it well, but his mother puts a lot of work into like whitewashing herself. It's a really sad thing. But because Marcos is so out of touch with those aspects of his heritage, it allowed me, like, your plain white dude, to you know, I didn't have to write things that weren't mine to write per se. I didn't, you know, like, I didn't have to try to like,
I get what you're saying. Yeah, no, so, I totally understand.
And kind of with the death aspect there too. One thing is, my dog is. Can you see him behind the couch?
Yeah,
he's just hiding behind the couch, barking at noises that he hears. So yeah, total mess here. I'm getting ready for a move, but
yeah, you're moving.
Yeah, I'm getting rid of all like so much stuff. In any case,
if you don't want those extra books, like I said, you've got my address. I'll hold on to them forever and then not give them back.
I have a lot of books that I would give away if I could give them away. I'll be doing a library run for sure in the near future. And I even dug out some old first editions of Longgrave with the original cover too.
I like this cover.
What does the original cover look like? I haven't seen it.
Strange.
Yeah, so it was. So Longgrave has this.
That's kind of cool though. I like both covers.
It's an original oil painting by my friend. I actually have the oil painting up in my apartment. I think it's lovely in its own way. It's there's an oil painter in the book, and that's actually like I was kind of going to be like, that's a painting of the hotel, because she did a painting of the hotel at one point in time, like really surreal kind of stuff. So that was supposed to be like her painting of the hotel. In any case, back to Marcos with the. I mean, it means a lot to hear that, and like, you know. You always have to like take some risks when it comes to sensitivity or insensitivity in a story. My goal, my hope is to really just try to like, I want to show the humanity in these characters. It doesn't always manifest in a nice way, like with the paperclip. Like, and again, we're in a spoiler section, so I'll just talk about how that kind of the unburdening of that trauma, the letting that particular baggage go, happens in City of Blood when Marcos is forced to confront all this blood, because the paperclip drew blood, and you know there's these things. So he's grieving his mother, and he lets that aspect of her go, and I hope that I never wanted it to be like Maria's the white savior woman who like saves Marcos from a bad mother and like is like a better mother to him. Like, I never wanted that to come across. Like, I wanted it to be like he had a really, really wonderful, complex, loving relationship with his mother.
Well,
you address that in City of Blood, I believe.
Yeah.
It's either Flashlighters or City of Blood, where like he's having the nightmares of his mother in the car. Which just hit so hard. Yeah, that was Flashlighter. So it hit so hard because, during sleepwalking, he's just keep waiting of where's my mother? Where's my mother? She must be at work. She must be at the hotel. And then the whole time she never survived the blackout.
Yeah, she died trying to get back to him. So
Mariah and Marcos, it never felt one did more than the other. Yeah. Their relationship to me felt equal measure. They saved each other. They were there for each other.
Found family. They found each other.
I never got the feeling that she saved him, or to me it was them together survived everything that they did because of their relationship, their bond. And I love that it wasn't just easy. I mean, I
love the notepads is seriously a real bitch.
Yes. Oh man.
And then he goes, sincerely not a real bitch.
Yeah. I love that there was a learning process. They found a way to communicate, and then she has slowly learned sign language and just getting to know each other. And it was not always easy.
No.
I just appreciated there was no convenience.
It doesn't just happen. Even with John in City of Blood, it doesn't just happen. He's ready to walk away. He comes to realize, like, oh, I want to be with them, but I can't be with them. There's not enough room in the plane. And then, like, just at the end when John goes in to get Marcos, like, they finally come together as a family. Like, it's not just, oh, hey, we found each other. We're this happy family. It's a story across at least 3 books for them to come together like that.
One of my favorite things to write was how, I'll say like, as far as like the savior thing with Maria and stuff like that, like there's just, you have in your head, like things you don't want it to be, things you don't want it to come across as. And I'm so glad to hear that it came across like natural to people. That means a lot. I mean, like I've said, like in every interview, I find myself saying that their scenes together are like my favorite scenes to write in the series, like Maria and Marcos. Like just like I love writing them together more than just about anything else. It comes super naturally. I love them. And well, but one of the fun thing about sidelining John in such a significant way through 2 and 3 was like he came back into 4 as like he's like the third wheel in his own journey, and he has to sort of like reestablish.
A good way to put that.
Place to some extent, but then at the same time, he also like Maria's like no longer afraid to just check his ass at the same time too. So. Right. Like there's like a not so thinly veiled threat where she's like, if you ever hurt Marcos, I'll fucking kill you. And,
yes, Andrew knows all about that.
Yeah. So just those moments, those kind of like the like maybe we're all just kind of. We're taking like familiar structures for stories and stuff, and we're trying to impart something fresh and our own wrinkles and things on that. And coming to like book 4 and John coming out of his illness was definitely something where I was like, oh, I haven't read this before. Like this awkwardness, like he's not quite back to himself, and like now there's this kid that he doesn't know, but like and. Maria's like, he's here now, live with it, like there's, and it's just, but then, John starts to fall for him too in his own particular way. It's
so difficult to talk about this stuff because I know all of the answers.
Yeah.
You are just, listen, Daniel said, I'm probably going to tease Andrew a little bit in the interview. And then Leslie comes out swinging.
Well, I said me and Leslie together we're going to tease you a little bit. It was never okay. It was never going to be just like
this is feeling like a 1-2 punch.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe you should read the second draft. I don't know. We'll see.
Yes, please. Yes. Well, can I get a little closer to this thing? Yes.
Well, yeah, we might be able to make that happen here if you don't mind it being second draft status.
Don't even care.
pre-final pass stuff.
Yeah, I'm more than anything to get it into my hands faster.
All right. Well, we'll talk after this is over. Then we'll figure something out.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the cover will come very soon. I am. Yeah, I mean he's wonderful. He sent me the rough sketch of it. It's got a wolf on it.
Oh my gosh!
Does it have a wolf?
I was about to say, what is it?
Can I describe it like conceptually a little bit? Because I don't think we're just talking about a cover, right? Yeah. So I kind of was like pitching to him several different ideas, and I kept changing my ideas and stuff, and coming, you know what I mean, like really annoying author stuff. And I was like, well, I want like kind of a white aesthetic. Can you do a white aesthetic with paints? Because it's like Lily is a winter novel, like through and through. And so I was talking to him about stuff, and I was like, can we do something but a wolf, but like not like too tangible? I don't know, again, like exactly how it's going to come, because it's a very just like positionally kind of sketch that he's got. But I was like, I don't want to like be cheesy or anything, but like if there's an ethereal aspect to the wolves, to maybe suggest that they're not like quite physical, that would be cool, like a ghostliness to them. I think that would, his style is beautiful for that sort of thing, surreal aesthetic. But then I had this idea. I was like, what about, because I said, can you do snow? And he said, yeah, I can do snow. And I was like, once I finished Lily, I was like, oh shit. But instead of snow, can you make it lily petals? So like the petals of, white petals of a lily falling.
That's super interesting. I can't wait to see this cover.
Just because there's this like, where the theme crosses over. Lily is the plane that waits in Wyoming.
Okay.
Like that's the name of Marshall's plane. It's only mentioned by name a couple times in the series. So I mean, most people when they finish 5, if they message me, they're like, what's Lily? Who's Lily? And I'm like, oh, remember it's, But again, it takes its time establishing it. So with 6, where it's like, there's perspectives and stuff. I understood that I was going to need to build up to Lily again within the book itself, because it was so sparsely scattered throughout those other things. So throughout the previous volumes, I kind of just be like, it needed to have its own build up, and it's kind of the core in many ways of this book. Lily, named, Marshall says in the first book, John says, hey, like, my brother isn't romantic. Like, Maria says, did you name that after a woman? And he's like, no, Marshall's not really romantic, like romantic type or something. And he named it after death. And Maria's like, that sounds pretty romantic to me. So Lily is this kind of, there's that underlying, metaphor, whatever you want to call it, like that underlying connection to death through this plane that is waiting to, shuttle certain people off further east to the conclusion of this journey. And then there's this recurring snow element too. And within the book, like sometime, just like the way language works and stuff. But in any case, I was like, it's snow, it's cold, but hey, let's have that be flower petals if that can come across. And I think like we can kind of bring a lot of these things together with the title and those things that are going on. I can't wait to see what he comes up with.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what he does with that.
It's gonna be special. I know it.
Well, the last, I guess, point that I wanted to talk about was a specific scene that I just thought of while you were talking earlier in City of Blood, and you mentioned how much you loved it.
Yeah.
And a specific scene.
The drain.
With Marcos in the drain. And I loved everything about that, because like at the same time, like you're inclined to believe, at least in my brain, it was that Marcos was a very young man, and so he was very, very prone to certain urges. And so he encounters this entity very voluptuous entity and has to kind of beat it back and beat the temptation. And it was so cool because he's been waiting through just a river of blood down the street. And then like he's just like, hey, and he's just like was that inspired by it?
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind that, I mean, of course, like stuff lurking in a storm drain, trying to lure a child or whatever over to the storm drain. Anybody, mm-hmm. It was definitely like a nod to Stephen King. I mean, like different in terms of function and form and capability and like the way things play out.
The arm came and like he realized he was being distracted.
Yeah,
the arm came from the other side of the street. Freaked me out. I was like, oh dang!
Yeah. He's like, he's the thing with little Georgie and it is that he's young enough to be tempted. There's a line in it where it was like if Georgie had been even at 2 years older, he wouldn't have this like the enticement of those like carnival smells and sounds from the storm drain wouldn't have worked. Mm-hmm. But he was 6 years old and like he had not quite reached that age where like this would have been scary for him if he had just been a little wiser to the world, a little more developed. But Marcos is 13, so he's not going to be like, oh, like, there's a sexy woman in a storm drain. This is going to be great. He's not like like he's older and he's a smart kid. He's a very smart kid. So
I must say that is something I never thought I would hear in my entire life. Of there's a sexy woman in the storm drain. This is gonna be great.
That's what horror can do for you. Take you to places you didn't expect. But and as Leslie might tell you, there might be a little bit more nightmares in Provo waiting for fun along the way.
Mm-hmm.
I heard you allude to the fact that like as it goes, it will keep evolving as people like maybe their nightmares are horror movie slashers and like monsters that we've seen before, and so like that is super exciting for me.
Well, if you'll remember a tweet that Daniel put out, he's like, "Oh, I can't wait for y'all to meet Mr. Horns." Screw Mr. Horns.
There's that one is a reference to my very first fear ever.
Yeah, screw that guy.
Like the thing that scared like when that was the scariest
thing in the series.
You think so?
Ruin it for me.
Awesome. I'm not gonna say anymore, but yeah, like come at me after you've read Mr. Horns section, and I'll tell you where the inspiration for that is if you don't see it already. You might
100%.
But there's in what do you call it in the second act, like the arc. I talked about this yesterday, Leslie, and I actually kind of like opened up about some stuff going forward with the series. But we're working within a series where there's no real constraints to what can be born because it's just what somebody's scared of. So I had this feeling like, I was it Iron Rain of Books who asked about vampires?
It might have been Daniel.
Yeah. In any case, I had this. Okay, gotcha. But I just there is room in here, I think, to explore a little bit of a traditional monster because somewhere across the world, somebody's going to be scared of something that kind of exists in our common like culture.
Don't let it be mine.
Not let it be yours. What's yours? You're not going to tell me.
What it is.
Spiders?
She's like, I'm not going to tell you.
I threw a little spider action into 5.
I know you did. You warned me ahead of time.
It was funny when I read that scene. I literally closed it, messaged Leslie, and I was just like, okay. And she was just like, don't worry. It's like Daniel already warned me. Like,
that was so much fun. Like I saw her reaction. I think she like shut the book herself that day. She was like, I'm not reading anymore. But you might be safe because I do have like a little counter in my head. I probably won't want to revisit spiders because I had my spiders moment. maybe
Good.
probably not. Who knows? Don't hold me to it. But I tend to think that if I do insectile something, it'll be something other than spiders moving forward. I wrote a book that was like so centered around spiders. I don't want to be like the spider guy, so I don't really need to do it anymore. But there might be. So go ahead.
Oh no, I was just like, as long as it's not the safe in Longreave, we're good.
No, it's My Hungry Friend.
Oh, okay. I might stick away from that one, but I'm definitely picking up the safe in Longreave.
Well, My Hungry Friend is other things too. It's not just
okay.
spiders, but like there's a heavy spider element. I don't know. I could. Yeah, it's cosmic horror, and it's like caretaking. A guy's caring for his mother who's ailing from Alzheimer's, like late stage Alzheimer's, and then some otherworldly things start to affect his life based off of one really terrible decision that he makes. But
you should have just led with that, because that sounds amazing, and now I want to read it.
Yeah, check it out. I mean, I think it's like it's only like 48,000 words. It's a pretty short book. In other words,
I'm planning on reading all of your stuff.
It's probably like City of Blood length, thereabouts. Maybe
not too bad. Couple sittings,
something like that. In any case, yeah, I really like that book a lot. But yeah, in the second act of like the second full act of Nightmare Land, I think we've covered a human element. Hey, how you doing, Nikki? Covered a human element a lot with the first 6, and I think that there's a lot of things I still want to explore with like nightmare stuff. And I Frankenstein's monster. I talked about this yesterday. You've read Frankenstein, probably. Well, I think there's an element here where, just this question of what it is to be born into this world as a nightmare, as somebody's nightmare, as a monster. And then sometimes, not all nightmares are scary. Some might be, helpless, tragic, pitiable. Like the things that scare people aren't always the thing. Like it's not always about predatory something or other. Like sometimes it's obscure and weird.
The garage horror was scary as hell, and that spawned from the mind of a baby.
That was a lot of fun. And then you'll notice this too with me if you pay any degree of attention. Is like I just have a thing for like mouths, like scare, like mouths. I don't know. I mean, like
teeth.
Teeth and mouths. Like I just on like that horror level, they fascinate and thrill me. So even like the upside down face guy was kind of all about like how weird it is for something to have a mouth on its forehead and stuff at the end of the day, and like and a tongue coming. I was just like, ooh, I like that. That's cool. Let's do it. But anyway.
Well, as we start wrapping up, we have been talking about these 5 wonderful, amazing books by this amazing gentleman. Here they are, all in physical copy. I believe I have in the description down below a link to Daniel's author page on Amazon. So if people have made it this far, they can check in there, click in, and help support Daniel as a self-pub author. I will also be picking up the rest of the books that I don't have, as well as apparently My Hungry Friend. But I have really, really enjoyed this, guys. And frankly, we'll probably have to do this again when Lily drops.
Hell yeah. Anytime. Either of you. Like
just so that I can yell at you guys for teasing me.
I feel so bad about it. I'm gonna have to send the book now because I feel so bad about it.
You know what? Then my master plan has
is gonna be blowing up.
What your message bot? Your inbox?
Yep.
I already talk to Lezlie all day, every day, pretty much. Like if I don't have anything to say, it's just good morning. Like
no, it'll be his daughter. Hi.
Hi.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, whenever she sees the phone and she sees I'm talking, I like do this motion and start talking. She starts going, hi. She knows I'm talking to somebody.
That's
usually
great.
Lezlie.
That's great. That's
but yes,
cool.
Speaking of said daughter, I do need to start wrapping this up so that I can go rock her to sleep.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you guys coming on the channel, and I really appreciate you agreeing to do an interview. You are a rock star to me. I love Nightmare Land Chronicles, and I can only imagine how much I'm going to love your other books.
Yeah, it's been insanely fantastic for me because I've been getting all of my fantasy friends. I'm using Nightmare Land as a gateway to horror. I'm like, guys, horror is not just one thing. It has so many different subgenres. And this series has just been just a doorway. And I know how good it is. I can recommend it with absolute confidence. And so it's been a delight for me because so many of my friends have read it and loved it. And we continue to add to our little army of fans for pushing. Daniel Barnett. Yeah.
I always joke that Lezlie sold more copies of it than I have. It's also Nightfall's free today. It's probably done about 1,000 free downloads today too, so that's pretty cool.
Oh wow, that's great.
That's amazing.
I did a couple promotions, one through Robin Reads and one through Fussy Librarian, and anyway, but yeah,
that's awesome.
You know what you two do is just it just means the world to me. Like I've said this before too. I was talking to Laurel Hightower the other day, direct messages, and I was just like, you know, this is it like putting so many eggs into one basket is like scary. Like I'm like, you know, it's almost like it's probably going to represent almost a decade of like my life by the time that I've wrapped things up with it. So, and you know, you're like, if people don't like the first one, then it's like, or you know, whatever, like people don't get into it, and it's, but I love telling this story and hearing when it connects with people. It scares me all the time. Like, but hearing when it connects with people, just, it means the world to me. It means a lot. And like, again, I'm going to revisit like just how many.
He says I can say it better. Just listen to me. Buy my owner's book.
Yeah. You can use we had a little entryway hallway, and the neighbors, he likes to police that, like that sound of the door opening and closing. But like hearing you talk about Marcos and knowing your connection with the deaf community, and like I mean I worry about these things. Not like I want to do a good job with these portrayals. Like horror for me, you know, it's a way to explore like humanity, like some of its best and like some of its worst and some of its best too. And and like his character was so important to me, and I was just like, no, so just hearing that, you know, I didn't fuck up terribly, at least, is a really nice thing, because
it's fantastic.
I really wanted to like do as much justice as I could there, you know.
I really appreciate how accessible you are on Twitter and Instagram. And I just cannot thank Lezlie enough for introducing me to not only Nightmare Land, but to you. So thank you, Lezlie, and thank you for being amazing, Daniel.
Thank both of you.
On that note, I could heap praises on you all night long, but we will have to stop at some point, so it might as well be now. So as I said, I have a link to Daniel's author page on Amazon to pick up his books in the description down below. I've also got a link to Leslie's channel, The Nerdy Narrative. She reads all the books from all the genres, and she is the queen of the nerds. So definitely check her out. And that said, guys, thank you for stopping by, for everybody who stuck around this entire time, even through the spoilers. And till next time, guys, peace out. Stay magical.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.